So, how how long have you been watching H3? Or actually, do you mind introducing yourself first?
Um, yeah, sure. My name's David. I'm an art student. I involved in not involved in, I've been a fan of political YouTube since the pandemic, kind of like you said earlier. That's kind of when
Yeah.
I got into it. I had been active in college in YDSA, the Young Democratic Socialists
Oh,
of
that's
America,
cool.
that club. Yeah. I consider myself a leftist. I have problems with Hasan, but I kind of uh yeah, I was a fan of his for a long time. Uh
Yeah.
Especially during the pandemic.
Oh, okay.
And H3 I've kind of I I kind of have a storied history with H3. I've been a fan of theirs on and off since like I think the Gamer Gunk video on H3H3 back in like that was when they were still in Israel, I think. Or maybe that was when they were in New York. I don't know. Early H3H3. I watched them a
Gotcha.
ton.
And
Started
how,
watching the
like,
pod.
were you in high school when you started watching them, or like middle school? I'm just
I
trying to get
think
a gauge of
that would have
how
been
old you were.
like yeah, early high school. That was
Okay.
so like perfect time. Perfect timing to find H3H3,
Yeah, because it seems
obviously.
like their content like was a little bit sillier back then. Like obviously with this whole drama thing, it seems
Well,
like
yeah, I mean,
it's like a little bit of a more mature subject matter.
at that point, I think they were Ethan was definitely more focused on just being a meme channel. And
Right.
he certainly loved like making fun of people. That has always been like a part of it, like goofing on people for being dumb.
Yeah.
Um and his political leanings have always been sort of a part of it, even though it was definitely sillier then. Um
Yeah, of course.
uh
As like
yeah,
everyone's political leanings are part of their content. Like
yeah, of course.
you watch the
And
Paul
I
brothers
like
and they're like, I hate taxes.
oh yeah. I mean, yeah, that's all another. Yeah. Uh but yeah, so I've been I was a fan of him then. I think I remember I kind of fell off when he started the podcast because I remember at first it just felt like they were kind of floundering and didn't really know what to do. And then
Yeah,
they
that's a
were
criticism
like
I've heard a lot. Like it's
they were like announced they were not going to be making any more H3H3 videos. And it's just like this is I don't really care for this. This is not why I followed this guy. And at the time I was starting to come to a political awakening where I was like I don't even want to single Ethan out on this, but like iDubbbz Filthy Frank, I was coming to a point in my life where I was like, I really don't like the way these guys throw around these words. And I was
yeah.
cool with it for a time, because I thought, it was Louis C.K. was sort of in the atmosphere at the time. That was sort
Yeah.
of it was like, oh, you can say whatever you want. It's in the name of humor. You don't mean it. Words are just
Right.
words. And it's like, that's all fine and good, but words have power for people in real life. It's easy to say that when those words don't affect you.
Yeah,
I'm
and
Latino,
oh
and
yeah.
sometimes, when it does hit different when a word like when it's coming for you, it's different. It makes you understand, like, oh shit, no, I can't be making these edgy jokes because it's just, words have meaning, words have power, and you can't just toss them around.
Right, of course. I'm of the belief that like comedy is a great tool to kind of it's almost like a lens that you can view the world through.
Yeah,
However, like people's comedy still has weight. Like their words still have weight, even if you say it's just comedy, bro. Like chill out.
exactly. Yeah. And like,
And that's a criticism that I've gotten like a lot of people. So just kind of going back to the Ethan versus Hassan drama, a lot of people on both
mm,
sides have really been a little bit like too touchy where they'll see Hassan like making a dumb joke and they'll be like, "Oh my god, Hassan's the worst person ever." Or they'll see Ethan saying a dumb joke and they'll be like, "Oh my god, like Ethan's so bigoted." or they'll like put an N-word compilation of Ethan. And it's like, look,
Yeah.
those are fine. Like it's fine to like call someone out for that like interpersonally, and I think it's even fine to call like a big content creator out for that.
Mhm.
However, I feel like Ethan and Hasan have both already learned their lessons in those areas. So for example, like the bro tips that Hasan did, where he's like, I'm gonna pretend to be this like douchebag conservative guy that's going to teach you how to pick up women, and then kind of the more edgy jokes that Ethan Klein used to be doing, where he would actually say the N word. He would like repeat slurs, but in a ironic, edgy way. And I think like both of these guys have learned that that's no longer acceptable, and they've actually moved on. So I feel like criticisms for Ethan and Hasan making jokes of that is almost irrelevant at this point.
Well,
What do you feel about that?
I will kind of I'll quibble with you on that a little bit, just in the way that I think Ethan's older jokes, you say like, yeah, it was edgy and ironic, but I do think in a way Ethan's character hasn't really changed that much since then.
Yeah, I
And I
agree with you there.
think I think for that, for better or for worse, and I think he owns that.
But I
But I
think he has
think,
cleaned up the kind of content that he'll
yeah,
put
no,
out
I
there.
think he's evolved. I mean, he's matured, he's had kids. He's like, I know it's like a meme at this point to joke about his age, but he's like what? He's creeping up on 40, right? He's got
Yeah.
3 kids. He's matured. He doesn't make the same kind of, he's a little more thoughtful in his, thoughtlessness than he used to be. I do think I have come to see Hassan in a different light, and that I do think his character has also not changed, but he has tried to hide it more. And that I think I've kind of felt that he was a misogynist before any of the drama stuff kicked off. That
Okay.
was like, honestly, from a partner I had at the time. I think we were both in YDSA, and we were both consuming a lot of leftist content because,
Yeah.
we were in college as like
You are what you eat, right?
academia. Yeah, I'm reading books. I'm like, we're both reading about it. We're like, we both were consuming the content. And she was like, yeah, just this guy, he kind of just is screaming at his chat the whole time. And he's kind of really annoying. And he's very dismissive, and he can be kind of sexist. And at first I was like, that seems diminishing. Sounds like, you know, at first I didn't think about that criticism that much. But then I started to notice things about him that I was like, yeah, dude, he is a frat dude at heart. He is the left Steven Crowder in a way. And I don't think he would own that though, which is what I don't like about him. If he was a little more like, he kind of used to be more open about, yeah, I am kind of a douchebag. I'm like a broy douchey guy, and that's just who I am. And I think he didn't used to put up the virtue signaling quite as much. I don't know, that's such a buzzword. I shouldn't even use that word. But he didn't used to feel the need to posture his virtuosity so much. Um,
Hmm. I mean,
I I see him as like, I do think they've both grown past that edgy phase. But I do think one of them owns it more than the other one, and that shows character to me, I think. I mean, outside of the political sphere, just
so
in
you're
terms of the drama of it.
so I guess like your issue is that Hassan pretended like he was never misogynistic and now he's not misogynistic, but like Ethan is like,
I think
yeah, I was
Hassan,
edgy and now I'm still
Ethan,
kind of edgy, but
yeah, Ethan's willing to tell you, hey, I've said some edgy jokes, and I'm probably gonna make some mistakes and tell more edgy jokes because I like to provoke people. I'm that kind of guy. I mean, most of the time it is just goofing around. But it's just like anytime you're with a friend, that's kind of the vibe of his content too. Ethan, that's been a
right.
big,
But like that's the
you know,
same kind of
you're
argument
hanging
that
with a
people
friend.
use to make for Joe Rogan, where it's like, Oh, why does Joe
Absolutely.
Rogan need to be factually correct in any of the content that he's putting out there?
Well,
He's just a guy with like talking into a mic. And it's like,
no, no,
but when you get
I
to a certain
agree.
size, you do have some kind of responsibility for the content that you're putting out into the
Totally.
world.
No, totally. And I think that there is a lot of nuance in that's why I've kind of I've been an H3 fan for a long time, but that's been an on and off. Ethan will say something that'll really turn me off, and I'm like, dude, fuck you. Like for a couple months, I'll be like, fuck that guy. I'm not gonna think about him, whatever. And then I'll see a pod clip, and I'm like, dude, I like these guys. And then yeah, I do wish Ethan was more informed on his takes.
Uh,
As a fan, I am like, you could shut your mouth more
no, I
if you don't
agree.
know
And
about
like, I
stuff.
think that they have a good dynamic. And like,
Yeah,
as I've been watching more of the show to just get information on where Ethan
I don't want to
stands
say
and all
Ethan
of
doesn't
this.
have like the right to talk about a lot of things too, especially this. You know,
Oh no, I think
that's
Ethan
not a
has
blanket
all the
statement.
right in the world to talk about things.
Yeah,
He can talk about whatever he wants. However, I would say like if you are going to talk about things, you should be making sure that you're like confident in what you're talking about and you're not creating disinformation. Um, and
yeah.
like,
Well, I think that was what was great about this video, which
oh
is why
yeah,
I
we can
feel
talk about the
like
video.
yeah, not to like rush into that, but that's kind of the thing to talk about. uh, it's I I personally still align more politically with Hasan. Um, but I said this in a Reddit comment somewhere. I'll say it again. There's a big, in my mind, huge difference between understanding the material realities in a country that cause radicalization amongst people and, understanding why those radical groups form,
Mm-hmm.
why they attract people, why they do what they do, and judging their actions based on a curve. There was the joke kind of Hassan being like, the resistance is not perfect. And I do think the way he makes everything so black and white, and that's what's so frustrating about him. He is very simplistic. There's a difference
I
between
mean,
understanding
I
what makes those groups what they are and full-throatedly endorsing them. Like, I can
right.
understand why children growing up in Gaza, experiencing the material reality of being a Palestinian in Gaza, how they could feel a burning hatred for Jewish people. I
Mm-hmm.
understand that just as much as I understand their right to protect what is their indigenous homeland and protect themselves from a horrific government, the Israeli government that is trying to bomb them into a exists. I support some of their actions, but I would never full throatedly endorse Hamas, especially since I don't live there. Like, I'm a United States citizen, and as much as, Hassan loves, he won't even pull the Middle Eastern card. He admits fully he's a white guy. He was born in New Jersey. He's Turkish. He's
Yeah,
got
I
some
just gotta
connection
stop
to
you
that
like real
culture,
quick
but
though, because like Hassan pretty clearly does not endorse wholeheartedly Hamas. Like he said October 7th is a tragedy. He says that like all Israelis are not settlers, not like Israelis are not settlers, they're not military targets. That is the view of Hamas, right? So like pretty clearly he doesn't wholeheartedly endorse Hamas. He doesn't even endorse October 7th. Like obviously he views October 7th as a tragedy.
and
So I think that's an
I
issue
think it would be
with
pretty
Ethan
insane
Klein.
if he didn't.
What?
I mean, I can see why you look, I got
Uh,
to think about this
okay,
for a
I'm just gonna
second.
step in real quick though and say like this is an issue that I have with Ethan Klein because I do think that he spreads misinformation about Hasan due to personal feelings of Hasan. And Ethan Klein even like famously said that the beef with Hasan is personal. It's not like on the same level as something with Dan Bilzerian. He said, like, he literally said in one of the episodes, the guy's like, "Oh, would you call Dan Bilzerian?" He's like, "Yeah, I'd call him." And they're like, "Well, would you call Hasan?" He's like, "That's more of a personal beef." So I think he is spreading a lot of misinformation about Hasan, and it's making
I
Hasan look like he's pro China, making Hasan look like he's pro Russia, making Hasan look like he's pro Hamas,
what do you,
Houthis,
okay.
and Hezbollah.
I I I mean I can you what misinformation do you find in that video? I mean, they're just clips of Hassan. I mean, you can say
Well,
they're out of context,
if
but I
Hasan
mean,
says that he's like, "Oh yeah, I don't have an issue with Hezbollah," right?
uh,
He said that in the clip that Ethan uses. He's like, "I don't have an issue with them," right? Do you remember that part?
yes.
So if we went through Hassan's clips and we found that Hasan does have issues with Hezbollah, then would you agree that's misinformation? Like, do you think it would be misinformation of Ethan to use like a 2 second clip of Hasan saying, "I don't have an issue with Hezbollah," when in the context of that conversation, he was talking about them as a resistance force against Israel? And then
Well,
if we
okay.
go through Hassan's streams and we see that Hasan is criticizing Hezbollah for their like war crimes and for the part that they played in the Syrian civil war, do you think that would be misinformation that Ethan is spreading in the Hassan content nuke?
I think you are coming at this with I think you have determined your conclusion to that question already. No, I don't. I don't think it is. And I think that you're saying very definitively like I can. Like you will scrub I we will go back and scrub through every Hassan clip and he will never appear a little bit too enthusiastic about these groups. And like and you know, again, going back to words matter, the way he stances matters. I think, you can, I don't know how you can call it misinformation when they're his actions. And I don't, as much as maybe we could find clips of him saying, well, I do have this specific problem with Hamas, or I do have this specific problem with Hezbollah. I don't like this. That was a bad move. We can also find tons and tons of clips, as Ethan did. And I'm sure Ethan's such a psycho, like, content goblin.
Mm-hmm.
He's got, if he's like threatening a part two, he's got clips on clips.
Yeah.
And I have watched, I don't even necessarily disagree. Like, I need to like put very strongly. I politically am not aligned with Ethan. I wouldn't say I despise liberals, but I
Mm-hmm.
don't you know, when people say
Okay,
we
you
need to be
have
more
to admit,
tolerant of other Americans, I tolerate liberals. I am a
you
communist.
have to
I
admit
am a
though, the
leftist.
section where Ethan was saying that Hassan was like manipulating him because he's a liberal was hilarious.
The red scarism at the beginning of the video is the goofiest. See, this is okay.
And it was kind of
This
at
is
the end
how
of the
I
video too,
can.
or
This
in
is
the
how I can
middle.
sum up. Yeah, this is how I can kind of sum up my feelings on that video, on Ethan's video specifically. It reminded me a lot of arguing with my dad. And my dad is libbed up. Like he loved Biden, he loves Obama. He
Yeah,
like
that's pretty
screen
lived up.
printed Obama t-shirts in
Oh, that's
2008.
hilarious.
I mean,
And let me
he's a
guess,
like a
he's
high
white.
school social studies teacher. No, he's Latino.
Oh,
Uh,
right. He's Latino.
yeah, he's lived up. But he's not, he is like Ethan. He is very staunch in his capitalist beliefs. He believes in the American way still somehow.
Right.
Uh, and but he's also at the same time, he's a history teacher. He has a college degree. So sometimes, even though he annoys the shit out of me, we'll be having an argument and he'll say something, and I'm like, well, fuck. He is undeniably right. And
Okay.
I I think two things. Like I said, there's a difference between endorsing and understanding. And I think two things can be true at the same time, which is that Hassan is not a terrible person, but is also, he's an opportunistic media guy. I have always had a problem. I know the meme. the socialism is one no house, yada yada. But it's when it's the mansion and the expensive dog and the Porsche and the parties and the clothes, like and the lifestyle, and you're hanging out with celebs all the time. It's like you know, you could be giving away money. You can brag, not brag, you can humble brag about how you're donating all your clothes, secondhand, whatever. But you could be donating that money instead of buying all these designer clothes in your mansion. You know, I, I,
I
I,
mean, that seems like
I,
extremely weak criticisms of Hasan. Like, even Ethan didn't really criticize him that much. Like, that was an
Ethan brought
extremely
that up.
minor part of the criticism.
I look. All I'm saying is,
Like, he
I
does,
think
like, the thing is,
Hassan.
he does donate money. So, like, if
Yes,
he's
I
living
no
in a
no no no
box,
no
is
no.
that enough? Like,
Let me
it's
say,
just a weird
no no
kind
no
of
no 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 no.
criticism.
It's not the criticism is not that he doesn't do enough. It's just that he's not. He's a cynical person. He was raised by a rich family. He's been rich his whole life. He's a little cynical when he's like, "Oh, I'm all about the class solidarity and the struggles of the working people." You have to look at him with a little bit of a cynical eye. And I have always kind of looked at him that way. Before this drama, before anything, before even the meme of socialists with a house, just anyone who is a gigantic streamer who is talking about socialism is not to be trusted 100%. And I say that of anyone, any single content
I
creator.
think it's fair
Uh,
to say that content creators shouldn't be
no
trusted
offense.
100%, right?
Because you are, I mean, it's like t-shirts with Che Guevara on them. That money's going to someone. You've created capital out of socialism, basically. You found a way to sit pretty while just yapping to other people about how great it would be if they could live like you do. On some level. Well, I'm not saying he's that cynical, but I am saying he is a cynical person. And I'm saying he would say what he speaks with absolute authority on a lot of stuff that he probably shouldn't, like Ethan does, which is a criticism I see get leveled at Ethan a lot, but not at Hasan, when I think it's a pretty applicable criticism to both of them, where they speak with an authority that they really have not earned.
Hmm.
Like I don't think anyone should be holding either of these two at a very like on a high pedestal.
Okay, that's fair. Like, I think at the end of the day, everything you just said could be boiled down to don't trust your favorite content creator whole cloth. Take everything they say with a grain of salt and utilize critical thinking to kind of analyze what they're telling you, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And
Now,
I,
that
I
being said, I don't think any of that has to do with kind of the drama between Ethan and Hasan. I think that's just like a good rule of thumb when you're consuming media in general.
see I'm confused where I'm confused at your point here where you're coming at how you're coming at it with Ethan is presenting misinformation then and how you don't see that his Hassan's cynicism and not trusting him whole cloth like you how can you not realize that you can be on even on like Hassan you can be a Hassan fan
Mm-hmm.
and still watch that video
Yeah.
take away obviously there's some frivolous and dumb points in it. Yeah, I'm not personally a McCarthyist, so you don't scare me when you say someone's a communist. I'm sorry,
Right. That was a
that
funny
to
part of the
me
video.
communism does not inspire to me images of Stalin and death camps. It inspires in me images of Star Trek and hopefulness
Yeah,
and
people actually
you know
living in a
yeah,
community with each other.
exactly. Like that
Basically,
that
people not
that
dying on the
that part of it
street.
is ridiculous. Exactly. Um, but I think you can ignore that part of the video and still hear a lot of what Ethan has to say and come out of it realizing that the portrait he paints of Hassan is not an inaccurate portrait of him. I mean, I don't know how you could say that there's misinformation in
Okay,
that
but
video.
we've been talking for a while, and I think like your main criticism of Hasan has been that you don't 100% trust him, and he can mess up at times. He can misreport the news, right? Um, and maybe it's like, okay, well, on this thing he's a little iffy, but people should go check it out himself. He's still like a leftist. He's even though he might be a communist, that doesn't mean that he's a bad guy or you should be afraid of him or like report him to the federal government.
No, okay, but here I do think some of the stuff he did push was dangerous, but I think it's dangerous more in the way that it's frustrating to me in that it just makes leftists look kind of bad. In that I think, as I said earlier, I think I'm sure I've repeated it two or three times. Difference between endorsement and understanding. Playing like Houthi propaganda videos and being like, "Oh, it's music videos, dude. It's fine." It's just like I I don't like these like red scare like that's dangerous, man. But it is like, dude, come on, use your brain a little bit. We can understand that they're not necessarily uh an evil group. Maybe they're a flawed group. Maybe they do make some net positive in the world. But you don't have to be so brainless and like not brainless, just careless. Like he that's why I think he's cynical. Is it just feels like I don't think that he doesn't believe what he says. I don't think he I just don't think he thinks things through because I don't think he has to because I think he exists kind of in an echo chamber and he is living a pretty comfortable life. And why would he? Why would he?
Yeah, I guess. Like, I think you can say that his actions in regards to like the Houthi and the Hamas music videos that he watched, like at worst you can say that's careless, right? But if you're saying he's showing that and he's like a whole cloth supporter of Hamas and the Houthis, I just think that's a misrepresentation of Hassan. And once again, you can
Well,
say like, oh, well, we can find clips where he's like being like, oh, the Houthi music videos are so cool. But then you can also find clips of him criticizing the Houthis, and you can find clips of him criticizing Hamas and criticizing Hezbollah. So once again, to only show half of that, that is misinformation, and that's like an issue I have
okay.
with Ethan's video.
Okay. See, but here is where, this is actually interesting because there's a recent news story that everyone is thinking about that comes to mind actually. I read some article, it was like an expose about Elon Musk from like a former friend of his. I'm
Yeah.
not comparing, by the this is not going to end in me comparing either of them to Elon Musk.
No,
Uh,
no, go for it.
like, but a friend of Elon Musk was like, Elon, the reason Ethan, he came out, wrote some article like the reason Elon did that Nazi salute is because, uh, for these reasons. He's cynical.
And this
It's
is
not
Elon
about
Musk's
ideology.
friend writing this article.
Yes.
Okay, or an
I
acquaintance.
hate to put all this word work on you, but you'll have to find this article on your own. I don't have a prepared source for you. I wish I did. Um, but it was like the point of this like thought piece article that this guy wrote who had known Elon was that it's not about ideology for him. It's about him being on the top. He is an Elon supremacist, not a white supremacist. I
Okay.
don't think Hasan, okay, now hold on. This is, yeah. I don't think Hasan is, you know, a sleeper member of Hamas. But, it's like satire is not satire if you do it enough. If you just sit and put on like propaganda videos and tell your audience like, no, no, these aren't propaganda. This is their music videos. There are very musical people. As like there's footage of them like raiding a ship. It's like, hey, you know, you're doing it even if that's not what you believe. You're doing it. You're
Right, right.
platforming
There's
that
like
to the
your
largest
effective
audience on Twitch too.
there's your effective output versus your intended output. So if you're criticizing the Democrats the entire time, even if you think of yourself as a Democrat, you might be attracting a Republican viewer base. Do you think
Exactly.
that's like, I guess I'm asking you, do you think Hassan is effective rhetoric is that like terrorism is great.
I think I don't think it has been, but I do think like and when I say has been, I mean over the years. I don't think it has been. Like
Okay.
over his entire career. No. I do think recently it has been uh, a weird yeah. I mean, because he's been more willing to at least jokingly appear that way and more often. And I do think that that means something. Like,
And I do just have to say like
The Luffy debacle, like, that's pretty that is what it is.
yeah,
That looks
and
pretty
honestly, like I
transparent.
don't really care about Hasan doing that because at the end of the day, that is like a teenager that has no affiliation with the actual military group. It's not like he's a high-ranking member and Hasan can really grill him on important questions. Like, do you understand where I'm coming from with that?
I understand where you're coming from with that, but I do think Hassan could drill him with questions that would paint a useful portrait for young people in America that watch Hassan of what it takes in life to radicalize a person. Like, why not ask him a question, like a softball question, like, "Hey, what do you say to people that say your methods are too extreme?" Or what made you feel like you had to take up arms and protect your country? Just ask him. Don't be like, "Hey, dude, Luffy. You're Luffy, dude." It's
Yeah,
like
I mean, at
he's
that point
like,
though, it seems like extremely minor criticism. It seems like it's like more of a semantic thing. And then once again, when we're talking about like effective rhetoric, is Hassan like supporting the slaughter of innocent people? Is he saying that's great? Is he saying that we should have violent, like, he's not even saying we should have violent resistance against capitalists or fascists. He's not calling for violence in America. The point of that interview, the effective rhetoric that came out of that interview was
mm,
this is like a real guy. At least that's what Hassan was trying to get across. Can you like understand where I'm coming from when I say that?
what do you mean? He's a real. I feel like the
Like
effective
Hassan
rhetoric
says he
was,
wanted to humanize him. He wanted to ask him about his interests, his goals, his hobbies, treat him like you would treat an 18-year-old.
um, I think that's a pretty pathetic use of an interview. Um, I think you treat someone, you humanize an 18-year-old who's like been through a tragedy. Obviously, yeah. I mean, speak to him, get
Well,
his
it's not so
perspective.
much as been through
But
a tragedy, but when he is
let
from
me,
a place that has been represented as being like a terrorist
yeah,
organization running
I'm,
that
I'm,
place,
yeah. I'm
then I
sorry. I'm
think
trying to
like it
like,
is
I'm thinking
it's
out loud
not
here.
I would say that like the utility of that interview isn't dissipated by like the softball aspect of the interview
I
because
think the
the views
utility of
like
that.
the predominant view at the time is viewing everyone in that area as a bloodthirsty Jew hating terrorist.
Um,
So do you
See,
see how there could be
here's
utility in a
where I'm
softball
seeing
interview in that
no.
context?
In fact, like very much no. When you're putting it that way, no. I think there should be at least there should be some facing of that outward appearance. If that is the outward perception, then you can't just be like, "Oh, well, let's ask him about what he likes to do," and not like you can't then just skirt completely around, you know,
Yeah, and he
the
didn't. He
Houthi part
asked
of
him
the
like, "Are
equation.
you anti-Semitic? Do you hate all Jews?" And obviously, like the guy's not going to
And then
say,
he
"Do I hate all Jews?" Right? He's obviously
okay.
not going to say that, even if he does believe that.
Yeah. Um, I mean, frankly, he should have a better reporter would have, it would have made the interview awkward. But when someone has a track record of posting like that kid does, you don't ask him, "Do you not like Jews?" You confront him as if it is a known fact that he doesn't like Jews, because it is a known fact that he doesn't like Jews. And, you can maybe there's maybe room there to talk to him about, the roots of that. maybe that would make people understand, hey, look, this kid is anti-Semitic. Maybe there are reasons, material reasons in his life that have made him that way, that are outside of his control. And we need
Right.
to understand those reasons more deeply. But he doesn't,
But do
Hasan
you
has no
think
interest in that.
the
He has
interview would be
interest
the
in,
place to do that kind of contextual
yes, other,
analysis?
what's the point of an interview otherwise? What, like, just to be a puff piece for this kid? Like, hey, you remind me of Luffy. You're great. You like One Piece? Like,
Right.
we
Well,
don't
I
need
don't
that.
think I
And Hassan also ate his lines, hook, line, and sink. The hostage thing. It just from that's like just eating propaganda. Hassan has done that so many. It's like I think there's two examples in that video. I know I can't name more, but I've
mhm,
seen him do it where he hears the narrative that the hostages were treated well, or he sees a video like Ethan shows of like hostages like basically at gunpoint being like waving goodbye and stuff.
right.
And he just immediately hook, line, and sinker is like, oh yeah, they're hanging out. They're all just all the Houthis and their hostages are chilling out on their ship. It's
Yeah.
like we can be aware of the reality that that is very much not fucking true, and
Yeah, and I
still
think that kind of comes
sympathize with
through
this
in what
kid.
Hassan says, right? Like when you say,
I
"Oh, they actually wish that they were hostages." That's so absurd on its face. Then anyone that's watching it with like not not expecting the worst out of Hassan will assume that that's a joke, right? Like when you say, "Oh,
I
the
mean,
hostages wish that they
that's
could go
pretty
back," do you think
charitable.
he actually believes
That's
that?
pretty charitable.
No, but
I
actually,
think.
do you think he believes that the hostages wish they could go back to the Hamas jails where they were kept?
Do I think they wish they could go back to
No,
the
does
jails?
do you think
No,
that Hassan believes that?
no. I don't think he literally believes they want to go back. Do I think that he
Right. And he
is
even made
willing
a
to tell
point.
people? I think is he willing to inform people that actually taking hostages is not so bad? And just like that's the thing here. I think this is the core of our argument here.
Mhm.
Is Hassan I am willing to live in a nuanced gray world. Not to sound, like like galaxy brained.
No, you're
Uh,
fine.
but I am willing to live in a nuanced world where um shit, lost my train of thought here. Where
You're talking about
um
Hassan and the hostages.
yeah, I can understand that I can have sympathy for the Houthis and what their plight is, while thinking that they are also a very imperfect group who has done evil acts, like held
Right.
hostages. And I can understand that it's not a my team, your team thing. It's groups of people who are not perfect. Hassan insists on a forward facing rhetoric that is focused around black and whiting everything. Do I think he black and whites things in a way that is always bad? No. I think some of the time you do need to simplify things, especially if you're talking to a huge audience of young people. Um,
Right, yeah.
but I think Ethan has a valid criticism that Hassan is kind of willing to cut corners in a way that is, I think Ethan maybe blows up the danger aspect of it, but it is dangerous and it could lead to dangerous shit. It's because it's like you shouldn't just be outwardly endorsing these people. And like I know we can argue back and forth whether or not he's done enough to say that he doesn't endorse them, but he also does a lot to propagandize them and is pretty willing to say that. And I think he should just think a little more critically about the human cost and not being this, I don't know. No, I don't think anything can get through to Hassan at this point, too. I mean, I keep saying it, he's got a massive audience.
Mhm.
And I don't even think he's that, as I've said a million times too, I don't think he's that off base on a lot of stuff. He does not really have that much of a reason to, you know, care about this. If he if he wanted to, he could probably ignore this and move on like it was nothing. Um, but I don't think he will because I do think that he is childish and careless, and I think he is a little douchey and a little broy, and I think he deserved to be called out for it. And I think he isn't dangerous in and of himself, but I think he is careless, and I think that can be dangerous in a way more that it makes leftists look really bad too. Like, I don't think it's dangerous in that what Hassan's going to send some kids from Ohio to go and join Hamas. No,
Right.
but it is dangerous in the way that it makes Hassan is the most frontward facing leftist created.
Mm-hmm.
Like, my parents know who he is. My grandparents probably have heard about him
Yeah.
once or twice. And they don't completely, they still have that McCarthyism era idea of communism and socialism in their mind. They, some of them are a little more open, some of them understand some things, but they're not all the way there. They can kind of wrap their head around social democracy. They can kind of get Bernie. But when you
Mm-hmm.
have someone as frontward facing as Hassan doing wild shit, like like posting propaganda videos completely uncritically on his stream, you have to take a moment to go, "Hey, man, what the fuck? What is wrong with you?" Think a little bit.
Yeah, I guess like you can call out Hassan for being careless in those circumstances, but like for me, that's kind of the beginning and the end of it. Like I would say that Ethan Klein's best point is that he played that music video and then, in the terms of service of Twitch, it's like promoting a terrorist organization is against the terms of service. And even Hasan said that he did get a talking to from the higher ups at Twitch, and they're like, don't do that again. It's like, okay, I won't.
I mean, the
Um,
Twitch higher up stuff is kind of nuts. I mean, that is what it is. That's a whole nother separate can of worms. I don't think we have the time to
yeah,
get
and
into
I
all
don't
that
even
crap.
think it's
But
like worth talking about because
no, I mean, it's worth talking about from
obviously
like a
bigger
content.
streamers are going to be favorited compared to
Sure,
smaller streamers. Like Asmongold Gold got
sure.
like a week off for saying that Palestinians are an inferior people, and Frogan got like a month off for doing, I don't know, for saying that soldiers shouldn't be getting. I don't even fucking know. What did she say? She said that soldiers shouldn't be getting health care unless they're like sorry
Yeah,
about what they
something like
did.
that.
It's like, okay, the whole Twitch thing, I don't really give a fuck about. But I do think it's interesting when we're talking about like Hassan's effective rhetoric and also what Ethan's blowing up there, because I think you can pretty easily make an argument. Like, it's interesting to me that you say Hassan says everything is black and white, but then you'll also say that Hassan is promoting these extremist groups in one clip, but then there are countless other clips where we can see him criticizing these extremist groups. So
Well,
I
I
would
think,
say that's
I
not
mean,
black and white.
I think you're making a sort of unfair statement there where you're saying, well, there's this one clip and then there's these many clips. And there's many clips of both. And I'm not going to let
Okay,
you,
but still,
I
that's
don't
not
want you
black and
to
white, right?
obfuscate the truth there. No, it's
Like,
black
even
and
if
white.
you say that there's many
But
clips
those
of
are
both and it's
his
actually
actions.
50-50.
If
No,
I like, if I told you like I shoplift once a week, and then like you came up to me and and then someone else came up to me and said you shoplifted, and I said no, I didn't shoplift today. Like, that's still, I still have to own the actions of the fact that I shoplifted before. Like, you can't just be like, oh well, Hassan did just full-throatedly, openly promote these terrorist organizations with a completely uncritical eye. Oh, but one
yeah, but
time a while
once
ago he
again, when you
said,
say it's a
and these
completely
actions aren't
uncritical
great.
eye, like, we don't know the context of those. If he's like,
I mean,
yes, these groups
I
are,
watched it. I've seen the clips.
yeah,
He
in
wants
the
to stream. He
clip, it's
doesn't.
uncritical,
He's
right? You
like,
can
yeah.
find a clip of Ethan sig hailing and say he's sig hailing uncritically.
What do you mean uncritically? He's saying he's giving you context before and after. That is Hassan he starts the terrorist propaganda video by saying it's a music video. And
Right.
look, I'm comfortable calling them terrorists too. I think the terrorist freedom fighter thing, we can talk
No, we
about
can
that
we can say
to the
they're
end of
terrorists.
time. I'm
Like, I
comfortable
don't care
using the
about
word
that.
terrorist. I don't I but I'm even like, I'm comfortable saying that terrorism is sometimes uh justified. But terrorism is still terrorism. It is what it is. You
It's
still have to I
violence
don't
to
think
aim political goals.
and there is no use in my mind in softening it because it just softening violence does nothing but beget violence to my mind. And softening the fact that like it is terrorism is
Hmm.
like people should be appalled by the fact you should be appalled by the fact that they're having to at the very least if you can't uh, if you can't if you can't say anything else at the very least you should be appalled that people are forced to go to those lengths to get their point across if you can't give them anything
Yeah,
else.
that's fair. I think that in America, there is a huge normalization of violence. When we see people getting deported violently, when we
Absolutely.
see like drone bombs, and it's like, oh, well, we did like 300 drone strikes last week. What are we gonna do? There's a huge normalization of violence. So I think that's completely fair saying that we should be more cognizant of like the violence that we're seeing and then maybe analyzing why we're seeing that violence, right?
Yeah, and I'll heap that criticism, if we don't want to just focus it on Hassan, I'll heap that criticism on Ethan as well for his very uncritical like we either have to be pro USA or USA bad. And it's like, no, dude, we live here, so there's some reason that we do have to in some way be a little bit pro USA because we're all here. The
Yeah,
consequences fall on us.
right.
But
That's a
USA
little
bad.
weird.
Yeah,
Like
the
last
US
week,
government is horrible. Like, I don't
when he
need
said
to.
Mr. Beast should buy TikTok, like that'd be better than China owning it. That was a little weird from Ethan, but
Yeah, I
yeah,
mean, Ethan is a little, but that's like, I mean, I don't want to give Ethan the pass of the older generation, but you know, like my
but
dad, everyone's
dude,
dad is
isn't he
like
like a
that. They.
millennial?
I think he is technically a millennial, but one of my teachers in high school was a millennial technically. So what does that even matter at this point?
Right. Yeah, so I guess like in conclusion, there are definitely clips of Hassan and he's like, "Oh, look at this cool music video from people in Yemen from the Houthis." I don't even know, is it like recruiting video or whatever?
It's like a
However, I
recruiting
would
video,
also
yeah.
like my sticking point is like even if you watch that clip uncritically, which just straight up isn't true because Ethan even includes a follow-up conversation that Hassan had with that other streamer later
Mm.
that day and um he's talking about like the different resistance organizations against Israel. He's like, yeah, they are terrorist organizations, but in terms of resisting against Israel, they're pretty effective, and I don't have a problem with them. So, like,
Well, I
there's
think
definitely context there that we're missing. Like, we know that, and just once again, like, we can
sure. I'll
criticize
I'll grant
Hassan.
you that, sure.
We can criticize Hassan for showing these things to his audience, right? It's like yeah, it's not the worst thing in the world. It's really not the worst thing in the world because at the end of the day, these groups that he is portraying really don't have any power. And it's not like a congressperson is going to get 10 phone calls because Hassan played this to support the Houthis now. Like they're literally
I
getting bombed by America as we speak. They pretty much have like no power whatsoever. At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter, other than like it could hurt some people's feelings online.
I mean, to say that they have no regional power is a little ridiculous, but I mean, yeah, ultimately the whole drama is just hurting people's feelings online. No one whose life is being affected by the Houthis is being affected by the fact that Hassan platformed them on his stream.
Well, I do think
But
that
it doesn't
there's
change the
something to
fact
be
that he
said
did.
about criticizing Israel publicly and
Certainly.
encouraging people to call their senators, encouraging people to go to protests to get this ceasefire forced because, like, literally Trump got into office, and because it was such a popular position to have a ceasefire in Israel, he made the ceasefire
That's
happen.
ridiculous. Do you believe that Trump made the ceasefire happen? I
Oh,
think, all
yes,
right,
undoubtedly.
that's
And
okay.
listen, I don't think this ceasefire is like a good thing. I think that a
I
ceasefire is
agree,
better than no ceasefire, of course. However,
certainly.
Donald Trump is making deals with Netanyahu. Day one, he signed an executive order saying that we're not going to impose sanctions on people in the West Bank anymore. So
Okay,
settlers can
okay,
do
okay.
any kind of crimes in the
Okay,
West
okay.
Bank. And so he's basically like giving Netanyahu this little gift in return for the ceasefire, which
No,
is
no, no.
basically just to return the hostages.
Yeah, no, I understand what you mean. When you said that, I thought you meant like I thought you were
Oh,
saying like Trump's bringing peace to the region, but
no,
I'm
no,
like,
no.
no, no, no. Yes, I
When
totally agree with you. He did make a deal with Netanyahu. He did make it happen
when
in
I
that way.
when I say
Yes.
when Trump gets into office, or by the time Trump leaves office, I honestly don't think there's going to be a Palestine anymore.
Well, I think, I mean, whether or not Trump will leave office is an interesting discussion
That's
that could go on
okay.
for
Yeah,
longer
that
than
is an
this.
interesting discussion.
Um, or whether or not there'll be an office to leave. Um, but you know, yeah, look, I think another thing that I think this video brought to the front about Israel, speaking of which, is that I do think there is also a point in being nuanced, in being critical of Israel as a government and Israel as a people, and thinking about the amount of Israelis who were displaced from nearby countries. And, they have nowhere to go. They are not, you know, colonizers in the West Bank, perfectly valid military targets. The Israeli government, awful, evil, despicable. The Israeli people deserve sympathy just as much as the Palestinian people do, and
Yeah,
as
of
any person
course.
does, as any poor working person living in that land, wherever if you want to call it Israel, if you want to call it Palestine, you know, I wish I knew like a better actually indigenous name for that strip of land. I wish we all did so that it was a little less difficult to talk about. But
Israelistine, that's what it's called.
Israelistine, is that true?
Israelistine. No, I just made it up.
um yeah,
You
you
know,
know.
but like if we're going to talk about Israel, because of course this is where the big disagreement came from. Ethan Klein and Hasan were all buddy buddy until October 7th happened, and then they started talking about Israel. And basically, Ethan Klein got really mad at Hasan because he felt like Hasan wasn't taking the feelings of Jewish people living in Israel seriously. I don't know. Like, I don't know how much you know about the genesis of
Yeah.
like the split of leftovers.
No, I remember the split. I was watching at that time. I did
Right.
watch Leftovers for a while. That was actually how I recently came back to H3, was through Hassan at that time.
Yeah,
Because
same.
the Trisha Paytas stuff really put me off of him for a while. Because I'm like, I get the idea of having this sort of who is the one radio host that Ethan talks about all the time? Howard Stern.
Howard
He
Stern.
loves to have his like rotating cast of like freaks, I guess, for lack of a better term.
You're not
But I
wrong.
could not stand him and Trisha Paytas together, and that put me off of him for a while. Um, but yeah, Hassan actually is what made me come back to Ethan and be like, yeah, I still find this guy funny. Uh,
Yeah, and
but
Ethan's
yeah, I do
funny in some
remember that
parts.
that breakup, and I think my See, I'm like, it's hard I was kind of conflicted on whether or not to even jump in this call because I'm like, I do think the the unfair thing that happened
Mm-hmm.
was that Ethan was uh dogpiled and immediately labeled a Zionist. But he didn't really do anything to help his case because in his to be fair to him, he was emotional. I think the big thing he did that people forget about that really poisoned people against him was, I don't know if you remember, I can't remember his name, that US veteran who
Yeah.
self-immolated.
Yeah.
Ethan made some really flippant, just asinine comments about that guy. Like, ah, fuck him. He doesn't even know what he's doing. He doesn't know what he's talking about. And I get that he was emotional at the time, but I think that really poisoned a lot of people to just be like, no, Ethan's a piece of shit. He really doesn't care. When I do think he does care. And I think this whole drama is kind of I was hesitant to talk about it because I think the whole thing is kind of blown out of them just not being willing to understand each other. And I kind of don't know how much there is to be like productive to come out of it. I mean, how much coming out of it will be productive because like they're not going to change. They are both who they are. I hope more people realize that they're both flawed but not evil. Um, I think I hate to both sidesify this, but really, I don't know. They're both just kind of ding dongs to me. uh,
Yeah.
I think Ethan is not pro-Israeli government. It was eye-opening and nice for me to see the clip of him acknowledging that settlers in the West Bank are fair targets. That does not exactly seem like a Zionist thing to say in my eyes. I have Jewish family. You know,
Yeah.
they
It's
they
difficult.
care about the state of Israel.
I
They
think
have family that lives there.
I think Ethan's doing a big disservice to his audience, however, because you have like sure you have Hasan talking about the intricacies of Hezbollah and all of these other radical groups, and he does talk about them. Uh, he does talk about them in like intricate, nuanced terms, and then there are going to be moments of levity that people are going to look at and be like, "This guy's just pro-terrorist." But then when we look at what Ethan Klein has been putting out, almost all of the anti-Semitism that he's been fighting, and I'm using the term anti-Semitism very loosely, but almost all of the anti-Semitism he's been fighting has been aimed at pro-Palestinian content creators. Um, and then you also have Ethan giving a very skewed view of Israel, I would say, where he does not acknowledge the apartheid that Israel exists under. He actually almost defends the apartheid by saying that Israel is not an
I
apartheid state. 20% of the population is Palestinian. So, how can it be an apartheid state? And then he wants to have a one state solution. And he'll go so far as to say that settlers are valid military targets in the West Bank.
he has openly he's I don't that you're
Oh, no, no,
okay.
no. Two state solution. Sorry, I
This
misspoke.
is yeah, I was gonna say that is misinformation. He has very
No, no,
openly
you're right.
said
You're
he's
right. I
advocating
totally
for a
misspoke
two-state
there.
solution.
But do you
Look,
kind of understand what I'm talking about? Where when you have Elon Musk literally like sig hailing, and then Ethan Klein releases a content nuke a week later, and he says the majority of anti-Semitism is coming from the left. Do you understand how that's a bit of a concern for
I
actual
think
leftists that are fighting against anti-Semitism?
I think you're generalizing here and getting some buzzwords thrown together. But
Okay, how am I generalizing? Tell
I,
me.
like what does I don't first of all I don't think Ethan's content nuke in any way says most
No, he
anti-Semitism is coming
literally
from the
says that in the
left.
content nuke. I don't know the timestamp, but I can find it for you. He literally
I would
says the majority of anti-Semitism is coming from the
the
left.
majority of anti-Semitism is coming from the left,
Yeah,
period, he says.
yeah. And
I
you
mean,
can
I
also
don't
look, and we can get back to the effective rhetoric conversation. And the effective rhetoric
mm,
that Ethan's been putting out there has been attacking pro Palestinian content creators for their anti Semitism. So, sure, he'll talk about Elon Musk hailing Hitler and how dumb that is.
I
He'll talk about
I
Dan
feel like
Bilzerian, who is a Nazi. He'll talk about Theo Vaughn, who's a conservative. But when you look at those are like 5 minute segments scattered throughout months of content. And he does entire episodes of leftist YouTubers and saying that they're anti Semitic.
well, no, okay. I I mean, I'm gonna need some. I think you're generalizing here, and then I think Ethan mostly talks about Hassan and Hassan orbiters. I don't. He has not strayed that far from that. Ethan has not been on this war path against pro Palestinian people. He has been, I think Ethan has faced some pretty unfair anti-Semitic comments. And I don't think, you know, I don't
No, I
think that,
agree.
I don't think that this kind of comes back to like, I don't think that everyone who's pro-Palestinian is anti-Semitic. I don't think Ethan makes that point. I don't, at least,
He doesn't
you
say
know,
that. He does not
if
say
you
that because
claim
Ethan
that Ethan
says he's
said that in that
pro-Palestinian.
video, no, no, no. I'm saying if you claim that Ethan said in that video that most anti-Semitism is coming from the left, you can put that in this video or whatever. But
I'll try to
as
find
far as
it.
outward facing rhetoric, that is not the takeaway that I came from. I did not come out of that video being it as a descriptor of the left. I saw
No,
it
I don't
being a
think that
video
that
very much about
video.
Hassan.
I don't think
And I
that
have found
specific.
his
Okay, go ahead.
rhetoric over the months to be very focused on the people that he make. Like, this video has kind of just been a summation of what he has been saying for months. This has been what he has been doing for months.
Right.
This is the anti-Semitism he has been facing for months. I think it's fair. I think it's fair to
Okay,
call a spade a
I'm just
spade.
gonna
They're being
pause you right there.
anti-Semitic.
I'm just gonna pause you right there. Um,
Mhm.
you said this is the anti-Semitism he's been dealing with for months. This is a summation of basically months of his life in terms of the content that he's putting out into the world.
Yes.
How does that refute what I was saying? Where what I'm saying is that his effective rhetoric is that the left is way more anti-Semitic than the right, when you agree with me that he's been
Because
focusing only on leftist anti-Semitism.
the name of this video that got a
No,
million
I'm not
views
talking
in
about the
19
video.
hours
You
is
said the
called
video.
Content Nuke Hassan.
I
It's
know.
about Hassan.
No, I know.
Everyone has known
But
for
you
months
just
it's
said that
focused
this
around
video,
Hassan and his orbiters.
you said this video is a summation of the content that he's been producing on his show. Or did I misunderstand that?
Yes, and I am saying that the,
So
the
then
the
the content
content has
on
been
his entire
focused around
show.
Hassan and specifically Frogan, his mods, and orbiters around them. Content, what's Comrade Casey?
Yeah.
It has been about these people. Those have been the leftists. Like, you're
No, I
adding
feel like you're
this
agreeing with
straw
me
man
though.
boogeyman of all these pro-Palestinian creators that Ethan has been dragging,
I mean, do
but
you
it's
think
been these
that
same people
Comrade
this whole
Casey,
time.
Hasan, and Frogan are not pro-Palestinian creators?
I think they're pro-Palestinian creators. I mean, yeah.
I'm not saying he
What do
goes
you mean?
after
Do I think
every
they're?
single
I do.
pro-Palestinian
But do I
creator.
think they are all pro-Palestine? Do they represent the entirety of the pro-Palestine movement? No. Like, what do you mean? Do I not think? Of course, I think that they're pro-Palestinian creators, and of course, Ethan calls them out for their anti-Semitism.
No, I think
But
you're
it's the same
disagreeing
group
with
of
me while
people.
actually agreeing with what I'm saying, because I'm saying he's been focused on this group of people, right? And you can say
Yes.
they're anti-Semitic, or maybe they encourage anti-Semitism through happenstance, right? Taking away a bit of agency from them. You can say that there's real anti-Semitism that's being created there, and we can have a
Yes.
conversation about that. But what I'm
Mhm.
saying is, when you have literally the shadow president sig hailing, making Holocaust jokes, believing in Nazi rhetoric, like Elon Musk believes in Nazi rhetoric, his grandparents were literally Nazis. When you have that threat of anti Semitism, it gives a skewed view of the world to Ethan's massive audience when he's saying, through his effective rhetoric in terms of what he chooses to focus on, and quite literally saying it out loud in this video, when he's saying that like the majority of anti-Semitism is coming from the left, that's giving a skewed view of the world, right? And even if he's
If
targeting anti-Semitism and it's coming from the left, if you spend all of your time targeting anti-Semitism from the left, that is also giving the impression to your audience that most anti-Semitism is coming from left-wingers.
Yeah, but this okay. This, but you're implying now that Ethan does not critically. I mean, they've Teddy Fresh has launched like two hugely successful shirts that say "fuck Elon Musk" on them.
No, I agree. And I said that he criticizes
He
Elon
talks
Musk, but
about
he
this
does
shit all
not
the time.
spend the same amount of
I'm
time
really
talking about
finding I'm
anti-Semitism from
having trouble with you
conservatism.
claiming that he says most anti-Semitism comes from the left. I need to see that
All
clip
right, let me
because
find it.
I can't debate you on that because I outwardly don't believe that he
But
said that. I don't believe
but I
you
think
that he said that.
you agree
I
with
think
his effective
it's
rhetoric, right? You agree with what I'm talking about when I'm talking about
I
his
think his
effective rhetoric.
effective rhetoric is to be critical of both sides. And I think to have a critical eye. I don't think Ethan is a propagandist in the same way Hasan is. And I don't even say that about Hasan as a put down. You know, propaganda on some level is important when you're trying to spread a message of any kind. Uh, but I think comparing them in that way is pretty disingenuous. To say that Ethan doesn't cover right-wing anti-Semitism is pretty crazy.
I never said
Uh,
that. I literally told you
but
that
you're
he
saying
does
you
cover
just
that.
implied that he is outwardly facing with the like you have been arguing that the perception his audience is coming away with from watching him, if they are getting his intended message, is that most anti-Semitism comes from the left. And I just don't agree with you on that. I think he is pretty
Okay,
non-biased in his
here.
coverage
This is
with
where it says it.
shitheads of both
I'm in the
sides.
transcript. It says, like, dude, the fact that they have the audacity to create Sabra, this is casual bigotry being passed around like a leftist talking point. It's exactly why people are saying that anti-Semitism is coming mostly from the left. And I know this is blank is also Jewish. Incredibly, he picked up so many tokens, he actually became one. So he's saying that most anti-Semitism is coming. He's saying that, and this is
No,
why
he's
people
saying
say,
this is why people are saying.
right,
I mean,
exactly, and that's just like a
yeah, so you
weaselly
did
way
that
of
is a
not saying it
misquote. I mean, that
himself.
is I don't see how you could come away from that video being like, yep, that offhanded sentence there was the thesis.
I'm not. Wait,
Like,
dude. I'm not saying it's the thesis. I'm saying he said that, and you said he didn't say it. Show me it, and then I showed it to you.
you
I'm
showed
not
me
saying that's the
saying
thesis of the
some
video.
people, what was the exact quote
All
again?
right, here,
Some
let's play it
people are
because the
saying
transcript is
this
a
is
little
why
iffy.
some people are saying most anti-Semitism comes from the
All right,
left.
hold on, let me play it.
Casual bigotry being passed around like a leftist.
Hold on, I'm gonna rewind it.
This is what most Israelis look like.
Dude, the fact that they have
Can you hear it?
I can't hear it now.
Oh, you can't? Okay.
No.
Well, if you're curious, it's at about 126.50 of the content nuke.
audacity to create Sabra.
Okay.
This is casual
Well,
bigotry being
I have
passed
actually
around.
got to hop off here a
Okay,
little
that's
bit
fine.
soon.
Let me just
I
listen to
can
this,
chit-chat
and then
a
I'll
little
repeat it
longer,
back to you real
No,
quick.
no, no, yeah. Cool.
Like a
I don't want to, I
leftist
just need to
talking
say that
create
so we can
Sabra.
find
This
some
is
kind of end
casual
cap on this.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
bigotry being passed around like a leftist talking point. It's
Oh, yeah, play
exactly
me the
what
clip.
people are saying, that anti-Semitism is coming mostly from the left. And yes, I know this dipshit is also Jewish. Incredible. He picked up so many tokens, he actually became one. And by the
Okay, so he says this is casual bigotry, and they're talking about Frogan, and then he says, and this is why people are saying that anti-Semitism mostly comes from the left. And then he talks about a Jewish person. He's like, okay, and I know that this person's Jewish, so he's saying that this leftist person that he's accusing of doing anti-Semitism is Jewish, but he's a token Jew, right? That's what. So that's the sentence that Ethan Klein put out there. So and I think it's a little bit disingenuous to say that, oh well, he's just saying people say that, right? Because that's a classic rhetorical. It's not even like a rhetoric. It's just a turn of phrase. It's like people are saying this, people are saying that. It's like that is the message that I'm putting. It's what Donald Trump does all the time. Oh, people say that Mexico needs tariffs on it.
I will acknowledge that, you know, those words were said, and I'm not gonna, you know, I don't want to dance around too much on semantics. I just don't think that that's, I don't believe that that's the point that Ethan is trying to make. And I do think there is a difference between saying in anger or in frustration. See, this is why most people say most anti-Semitism comes from the left. And just saying the statement, I think most anti-Semitism comes from the left. I think there's a difference between those two things. I don't want
Yeah,
to blow this into
fair.
like a bigger argument than it needs to
Yeah,
be.
and
But
then I guess
think
I would
there's a
just
big
say,
difference between those two
like,
things.
do you think there could be a difference between Ethan believing that most anti-Semitism comes from the left, because that is something that he said in the past, and that being the thesis of all of these takedowns? Like, I don't think that Ethan's trying to make the point that most anti-Semitism comes from the left, but when he does see things he perceives as anti-Semitism, He's definitely willing to like dive into it and attack it. And it just so happens that Ethan exists in an online media bubble where he's surrounded by leftist people. So of course that's the thing that's going to be like most up in front in his face.
See, I don't. I think. I think the point we disagree on here is I don't. I think Ethan then has a right to be like, why are not more people annoyed about this? Because I think that's the whole point of his video. Is not these people are evil. It's just like,
No,
are
that's
we not calling them
100%
out
fair.
for
I th-
being? They're on the right side of history. We don't have to have a whole big moral debate really about these people who are pro-Palestine. Uh, but yeah, like, dude, you know, you can, we can still call them out for acting anti-Semitic,
Yeah.
and
And that's
I
100%
think
fair. I
people should.
totally agree with the idea that we can call people out for being anti Semitic. Where I would take caution is when you start saying that these people that are pro Palestinian are anti Semitic, and that's the majority of anti Semitism in this country. That's where I think we're starting to get into some really dangerous territory. And I think Ethan
I
Klein
do.
has been sending that message to his audience, whether you agree with me or not. Like, he said that multiple times.
I can see how, I can see obviously. I mean, this whole thing has been the whole drama. Like I said before, has been a real like comedy of miscommunications, I think. And
Okay,
I can see
that's
how
fair.
anyone could fairly, I think fairly. I'll even say I'll grant you fairly come away with the conclusion that Ethan has a bias against the left in terms of
Yeah.
I don't think that he believes that sentiment. I just don't believe that. And I am just gonna, we're gonna have to just agree to disagree on that. I don't think that Ethan believes that
Okay.
most anti-Semitism comes from the
I mean, he's
left.
literally said it multiple times. So,
I mean,
and then
you
also
can
his
say
actions have
I
proven that too. But it's
I
okay.
don't.
Like, I guess this war will end the conversation because at this point you're just kind of like disagreeing with reality. Like, I'm not disacknowledging that Hasan didn't watch a Houthi music video, right? Like,
Yeah.
I'm acknowledging he watched that. I'm acknowledging that he kind of like portrayed it in a good light. I'm saying there's
Uh,
additional context where he's saying that like the Houthis are bad. And then when I bring up something like Ethan saying most anti-Semitism is coming from the left, uh, and then there's like countless examples where he'll always go
you
back
showed me
to,
one example, and now you're saying there's countless
yeah, there
examples.
are countless
See,
examples. And
here's
then
where
also his
this
effective
is where
rhetoric has been
I'm going to cut
targeting
you off right
leftist
here, because
anti-Semitism.
I think you're a good guy. I think you're smart. I've enjoyed this conversation.
Hmm.
Uh,
No,
but I
this was a
do
good
think
conversation. Sorry if I'm like being too.
no, no, no. I think you're coming at this with a little bit of a bias. That's my opinion. I'm coming at it with my own bias, and that's life.
Okay.
Uh,
No, everyone has
but
bias. I just don't think you've addressed any of my points when we're talking about Ethan
Well,
Klein believing
you're just saying I
anti-Semitism.
have a point. I have there's these countless times Ethan has said this, and I'm saying I don't. I think Ethan has criticized leftists for being anti-Semitic, but I don't
Right.
think Ethan believes. I just don't. You're saying, oh, he says it all the time, and I'm just saying I have watched him. I don't believe. I disagree with that notion. He doesn't. That's not true. We can say, I guess we are disagreeing on reality in some way.
Well, he's
And
oh, all right.
I
Let's
don't
just
know,
leave it at
man. I
this, and
just don't
then
think that that's
let's
true.
let's call it. But
Yeah,
just
let's
my
call it
final
a day.
point on this is he said it at least twice that I know of, and then we also can agree that when he's tackling anti-Semitism, he's aiming his anti-Semitism gun at the left like 90% of the time.
I think he's aiming the gun at anti-Semites, man. I don't think it's that deep. I
No,
think
no, but if he was
I
aiming it, if he's just like, if we have all anti Semites in a circle and like 90, this is the thing. If you're going to say that he's aiming his gun at just anti Semites, let's picture it as a pie chart. And 90% of his content is about leftist anti Semites, according to Ethan. That would mean that 90% of anti Semitism is coming from the left. And once again, I think that is the view that he's giving his audience. I just
I
think that's a
don't
dangerous view.
I just don't understand how you're even coming to that conclusion. That's just I feel like you are trying to come at this with the viewpoint that Ethan is a net negative to the left, which I don't think. I don't think Ethan belongs in a conversation about leftist spaces. Frankly, he's not a
No,
leftist.
yeah, I think
Uh,
he's
but I
running
don't think
defense for
that I
conservatives.
think you're mischaracterizing him to a pretty extreme degree there. Um,
I'm just
I think
repeating his content back to you. I'm not like,
you're not. You're saying that these things happen, and
but
I
you've
mean, we're
agreed with
just
me
gonna have
that
to
the
disagree.
majority of his content has been at leftist anti-Semites, and then you're saying
Yeah,
that he's just
but he
targeting
doesn't
anti-Semites.
say. I no. Okay, no, because he talks about Trump and Elon like every fucking day. They're
Mm-hmm.
always in the news, dude.
Yeah.
He's talking about. I don't. I think it's totally unfair to say. I think he does certainly target. Target is even an extreme word. He does talk about leftists who do some anti-Semitic shit.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we need to blow it up to the point that Ethan Klein is saying that 90% of anti Semitism comes from the left. Like, that's a pretty wild take, man. Like, he talks about anti Semites of all colors and shitheads of all colors. I
Yeah.
don't think he really is calling people out with a bias. I think certainly,
Of
you know,
course
you
he's calling
presented the
people out
idea
with a
that
bias.
Ethan. No,
People
okay,
that talk about
wait.
Ethan Klein, he's going to be biased against them.
Hold on.
No,
You
I'm not,
have
like, I don't think that's a criticism.
proposed
That's
the
extremely
idea. No,
natural.
no. You have floated this idea that, you know, maybe Ethan is only responding to leftists because they're just in his media bubble.
They're in
But I
his
feel
feed,
like
yeah.
now you are characterizing Ethan in a way that is making me go, are you only watching clips of Ethan when he's talking about leftists being anti Semitic? Because if you watch these 4 hour long episodes of the H3 podcast, he is not yapping on the whole time
Right.
about
No,
how
he's not. He's
uh,
not. For sure, he's
anti,
not doing that.
you know, I think that's a mischaracterization of him. I don't think that's an accurate portrayal of what he believes in his character. That's just where I disagree with you.
And I think you can say he doesn't believe that, but I do think that he has a conflate. Like, all right, I'll just end it at this. But I do think like the effect of this whole issue with Hasan, and even he attacked the Majority Report at one point, Frogan, Comrade Casey, is that his audience really, I think his audience views the far left as uh, on an even playing field with the far right. They think the far left is just as extreme, just as dangerous to the core of this country as the far right. I mean, I don't know. What do you think about that? Just tell me what you think, and then we can call it. And
I
this is
I
this was a good
I
conversation. So
I agree. This is where I'll kind of go back to my sort of not both sides, but this is where I will level criticism at both Ethan and Hassan
mm-hmm.
one last time. I will say that I do think there is a rising sentiment in Ethan's audience that feels that way. That the far left is just as dangerous as the far right,
Yeah.
and I think there is a similar but different problem in Hassan's community where they have decided that liberals are just as bad as the far right. And liberals are pretty annoying, but they're not that bad. And they're not that net negative. And I do think what is pushing Ethan's audience that way is Hassan's carelessness and the intersection those two audiences have had with each other. I think Ethan has had valid criticisms that have made both net positives and net negatives for his community. I guess that's my takeaway.
Okay.
Uh,
Well, I mean, you can't really argue with that.
yeah, I mean that is kind of just a literal fact.
Yeah. No,
But
I definitely appreciate you coming on. And then
yeah,
maybe we
no
can have
problem.
a conversation later. You know what? I've been messaging people, and I'm like, I think it would be fun to have like a panel of multiple people that are like Hassan fans and H3 fans and see what they say. But that could get insane.
Yeah,
But you seem like you're very well informed on this issue. And so I did like enjoy talking with you about this.
no, this was fun. No, I enjoyed. I mean, I like. Forgive me if I get heated. I am just enjoying the debate.
No,
I've
yeah.
got no problem with you. I enjoyed speaking with you. I'm definitely going to check out your channel and everything.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah, I'm gonna be streaming more, and then You're on my Discord, so we can keep in touch
Yeah.
there. Yeah,
I mean,
so
obviously, you've gleaned from my conversation that I don't know if I'd be that great on a Ethan fan versus Hasan fan panel because I don't
I
know where I
think
would
you
even
would,
put
because
myself on that
like
panel.
you were making some good points, and I thought we had a good back and forth.
I feel like I could just be. I feel like I could be jumping onto both sides of that panel. Though.
I mean,
That's
that's kind of
why
the
I
point. Like,
don't
I
know.
want so
Yeah.
one thing that I've like disliked the most about this drama is I look at like the subreddits, and that's where I DM'd you, and it's like,
Yeah.
oh, Hassan dressed up as a maid, isn't he a piece of shit? And then it's like in Hassan's subreddit, it's like Ethan is saying that Hassan's probably going to be laughing when the fire burns Ethan's computer. Isn't Ethan
Yeah.
like a whacked out nut job? And it's like,
Oh yeah.
it really seems like these subreddits encourage kind of the worst and most extremes of both sides. And so
No,
kind
yeah.
of
The
this
one
project
thing.
of me
Oh,
reaching
sorry.
out, I'm just going to say, like, the kind of the point of me reaching out to people is to show that when people are actually like pressed on things and they actually examine their own positions, then we can have a good conversation with middle ground.
Yeah. And look, you know, the one thing that I think the one take Ethan has that everyone should agree with is that everyone on fucking Reddit needs to touch grass a little bit more.
Yeah,
I don't know what
that's
people
true.
are on. I mean, I love,
All right, mate.
sort of
I
the
gotta go,
human
but
circus of popping on there, but yeah.
yeah, no, it's crazy. But anyway, good
Yeah.
conversation. I gotta go. Thanks
Yep.
so
Have
much,
a good one.
and I'll talk to you later.